Welcome back, everyone. So in this episode, I just want to introduce two new features from Casambi app. Obviously, there have been more, but a lot of them are just stuff in the background, or they're not necessarily things that a residential end user would use. They're predominantly things for commercial buildings related to building management systems and things like that. But these two little things you can use in a residential environment or in corporate environments as well, offices, restaurants, etc. Anywhere really. So the first one is related to the previous video that I just did about lights and extractor fans in a bathroom. In the previous video, I used a presence switch. I used a switch, but it can be done, or actually, it always has been possible to do it with a presence sensor. So for those of you that haven't watched the previous video, please do, and then come back and watch this one again because it'll make a lot more sense to you. In the video here, we've got a presence sensor, battery powered presence sensor, and I'll show you its configuration. So I've used it to configure exactly the same scenes that I'd used in the previous video. I've got an animation that starts when the scene is when the sensor is triggered, and when it sees absence, it then eventually runs the absence scene. Okay. You'll see the second last option there is absence timeout. Okay, that's the new option I'm referring to. It's disabled right now. So up until I believe roughly 2 to 3 months ago, this was the way it still had to be done. So if I do this now, I'll just trigger the presence sensor. Same thing as before, the light comes on, the extractor fan comes on. Let's give it some seconds, the light goes out because we've walked away. And eventually the fan turns itself off. Okay, so we're using the same animations that I made in the previous video. They just weren't assigned to a switch, they were assigned to a presence sensor instead. But if we now go back to the presence sensor options, because of this new absence timeout option, we no longer need to use animations anymore. We don't need that X seconds wait, okay, for the absence scene anymore. So I'm going to remove the animations, and instead I'm going to use bedroom presence and bedroom absence, which I've unfortunately called bedroom presence too. Okay, and let's have an absence timeout of, let's give it 10 seconds, actually 15. We've still got a linger time of 5 though. Okay, so to save on confusion, I'm actually going to go back and correct the name of that scene, which of course has just turned the fan on. Let's call it abs. I'll turn it off now. Okay. Let's go back to sensors again. So now we have the correct bathroom presence and bathroom absence scenes. Okay. Again, linger time of 5 seconds, absence timeout for 15 seconds. Again, just to show you, they're not animations anymore, they're now just basic scenes. So the bathroom presence has a fan turned on and active, and then it has the small round RGB light enabled and active, dim to about 20%, 20-30%, and green. Let's just turn that one off. And absence, again, still has the fan selected and the round RGB light selected, but it's dimmed to 0%, but the fan is on. Remember, presence absence always has to change the same devices. You can't have a device A in presence, and then device B in absence. It has to be the same device or devices in both presence and absence. So for demo now, let's resume automation to turn everything off. Okay, apparently I've triggered my sensor. So let's leave it be. Okay. So here's a problem I hadn't foreseen. The movement of the fan is triggering my sensor. Didn't think of that. So what we'll do is we'll move that over there. And you'll see that once the light goes out, let's give it 10 seconds or so, and eventually the fan will turn off. There we go. So what I'll do now is I'll just talk you through that again, but I'll move to the scenes page so you can actually see what's happening. So let's activate the presence sensor. There we go. Now at this point, if I keep moving it, we are still in absence. When I put it down now, sorry, we're still in presence. When I put it down, we go into absence. The light goes out, and then we've still got that absence timeout. So we've got about roughly 10-ish, 8 to 10 seconds left, and eventually the fan will turn itself off. Yeah, and now you can see that the bathroom absence presence has also disabled itself as well. If I didn't have that option enabled, so if we didn't have the absence timeout enabled, the fan would just remain on forever. Okay. And one last thing to remember, which I just noticed myself, it refers to the absence timeout, okay, which is 15 seconds. Now, the thing you need to bear in mind though is that absence timeout starts as soon as there is no, as soon as the sensor sees absence, okay. And you've got to remember that your linger time starts after the presence sensor sees absence. So realistically, what that means is the light stays on for 5 seconds, but that 5 seconds also counts as part of your absence time. So the fan then only remains on for 10 seconds after the light has gone out. So what that actually means is your absence timeout value includes the linger time value. So if you want your absence timeout to be 30 seconds, with the fan on for itself for 30 seconds just by itself, you have to add that 30 seconds to the linger time. So in this case, it would be 35 seconds. So this is the second useful feature which I think some people might like. It's actually something which was requested a very long time ago, years ago. It's taken Casambi a while to implement it, but better late than never. If you cast your mind back to presence scenes, daylight dimming scenes from our previous videos, you remember we've talked about the various types of daylight control loops that you can have. Okay, so just to recap, there's basic on and off, which turns your lights on and off based on when it sees a specific lux level falling onto your sensor. Then there's the open loop, which looks for, or it bases the output on the amount of light falling onto the sensor. And there's a closed loop, which looks for the amount of light around the sensor itself, but it also takes into account the amount of light coming from the artificial lights within the same room. And with a closed loop, you specify the level of light that you want that particular room or area to be in. Okay, so we'll take closed loop for now, which I've already set up for this particular scene. Just to recap again, so we're using one single daylight sensor, which I have on the other side of the room. You can't see it in this video. And for the sake of testing, I'm pointing it directly out of the window because I deliberately want a very high lux value on the sensor. Okay, I'm going to allow it to use the full dim range. I've dimmed the minimum dimming level down to 0. Again, for this test, I've deliberately dropped the change rate to 1 second. The default 2.5 seconds is absolutely fine in most cases. I've lowered the desired luminance to 250, which is maybe a little lower than normal. And the tolerance I've dropped from 15 to 10. That's just personal preference. I like a bit of a lower tolerance, but I don't recommend you to go much below 10. Ignore the activation level option for now. That's what we're going to talk about soon. What I want to show you first is the way it used to be. So if we come out of that, we'll select done. So in the standard way of or the previous way of doing things, what annoyed a lot of people, quite rightly so, in the summertime, if I have this is the default setting for my scene, and you can see it's dimmed, the light is dimmed to 100%. Therefore, if this light is triggered by a presence sensor during the summer, what would actually happen is it'll come on at 100% and then drop it, slowly fade all the way down until maybe 10-20%. It might even turn itself off completely in some cases, depending on how much natural light there is in the room. I always used to recommend to my customers to actually set that initial dimming value to 50%. The reason for that is, in the winter time, you don't want your lights to come on at 0 and then slowly dim their way up. You need light pretty much, well, immediately. So I've always felt that the 50% was a good workaround. It gave you some amount of light in the winter time and then became brighter. And in the summertime, it gave you some light, but not too much as to require the light to take a long time to dim down. However, the option has now been implemented to work around this and get a better way of working with it. But just to demonstrate first the way it used to work. So if I quickly disable and enable the light, while that's on, I'll just show that I'm using this 1, 2, 3, 4, this fourth sensor down, CBU Mod 3M. You can see that it can currently see 2000 lux. Now naturally, that would mean you don't need any light on, any artificial light in the room. So if I hold that down, you'll see it's slowly started to drop from 100% and it's going down. Just for the case of this demo, I've deliberately altered the sensor settings to be a bit more sensitive. Okay, so it's dropping 85, 84, 82, and 81. Okay, now that'll take quite a while. It's not going to happen instantly, but you get the idea. The system realizes that it doesn't need that much brightness, so it's slowly starting to dim it down. And this is the summer right now, so that's why if it had been 50%, it would have taken it wouldn't have taken so long to dive down, to dim down. So let's turn that off for now. So that's how it used to be. We go back to closed loop. Now if we look right at the very bottom, we've got a new option called activation level. Now unfortunately there's nothing in the user guide about this yet, but it's not hard to use. So simply select it. Similar to the to the circadian rhythm options, you can move this line round and it tells you the light level, lux level versus the dimming level. Okay, the yellow bar on the left there is a representation of the desired lux level that you've set. So in my case, it's 250 lux. Let's just so you can see the difference. If I whack that up to, let's say 500, that'll do 589. You can already see here in the example that it's widened, and here again you can see that the line has changed to represent the different lux value. But I'll put that back to 250 for now. And then select activation level again. This is similar to the open loop, okay? This is how it'll appear as default with the line horizontally like that. Feel free to tailor your own curve. You can add extra points in, things like that, if you really want to, okay? But for the sake of this example, I'm just going to use a nice straight line. So what this means is if we take the black bar here and go right to the top, or sorry, to the bottom, when the daylight sensor sees 2000 lux, the dimming level of the lights should be 0. And at the opposite end of things, if there is no light on the sensor whatsoever, then the light should be on 100%. Okay? And I'm going to leave it at that. So what that means now is, if I have a really high level of light shining onto the presence sensor, then it won't output the light initially at 100%, okay? So turn that off. And go back to my presence sensor. Again, you can see 2000 lux because I'm shining it out right out of the window. So if I now turn this scene on, it should, the scene will activate, but the light will not come on. There you go. And that's because we configured that option to say if the amount of light shining onto the sensor is really high, don't even bother putting the lights on. Now to show you what will happen, if I now go and cover over the presence sensor or the light sensor, and then go back to, you can already see that it's coming on. It's raising 3.2, 4.8, 6.3, 7.9. Yep, and now you can actually see, I don't know how well it's going to expose, but you can see it's slowly coming on again. And this doesn't mean it'll go all the way to 100%. It'll only go up until the room is what it believes is at 250 lux, which is what I set it to. Yeah, 250, as you can see there. Okay, so if I disable that scene now, and again, turn it on, remember that the sensor, the presence sensor, does not see anywhere near as much light. It sees 1 lux because I have a cup over this presence sensor. If I enable it, now the light comes straight on because it needs that light. Again, I'm just taking the cup off. The presence sensor now sees 1870 something. So again, let's turn it on, see what happens. We've got a really small amount of light there, but that's it. Nowhere near the 100%. Let's see what's going to happen now. 3.2. It looks like it is actually going to dim it all the way down. Yeah, eventually. No, it did go to 0, yeah, so it did eventually turn it off. Okay, so just to recap. This activation level now is a much nicer option than just altering your starting point here. Okay, you can effectively now always have your lights dimmed to 100% regardless. Okay, and then just control the initial starting point using this level here. And again, it doesn't have to be a straight line. You can tailor it to your own needs. And that's it. Bye for now.